The gunshot echoed through the silent streets of San Diego as Naomi Bennett clutched her young son close to her chest, trembling with fear in the dusty alleyway behind her small general store. The year was 1873, and the California sun had just begun to set, casting long shadows across the dirt road where three masked men had vanished with everything she owned. "Mama, are they gone?" whispered 6-year-old Samuel, his face buried against the faded fabric of her dress. "Yes, my love," she murmured, smoothing his dark hair with a shaking hand. "They're gone now." The hollow feeling in her chest had nothing to do with hunger, though she hadn't eaten since breakfast. In just 10 minutes, she had become utterly destitute, a widow with nothing but the clothes on her back and a child to feed. Naomi helped her son to his feet and peered cautiously into the street. The townspeople were emerging from their hiding places, faces grim but unsurprised. Robberies weren't uncommon in San Diego, especially at establishments run by women alone. Sheriff Dawson approached, his weathered face pinched with concern. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm mighty sorry about this. Those were the Harding boys, I'd wager, been terrorizing towns up and down the coast." Naomi straightened her shoulders, refusing to let her tears fall. "They took everything, Sheriff. The money from the register, our personal savings from behind the counter, even the gold locket with my late husband's portrait. And the deed to the store, Mama," Samuel added quietly. "And Pa's pocket watch." The sheriff removed his hat, revealing thinning gray hair. "I'll send telegrams to neighboring towns, but I can't make promises. Those men are likely halfway to Mexico by now." Naomi nodded, the reality of her situation settling like a physical weight. 6 months a widow, and now this. How would she feed her child? Where would they sleep tonight? William had left her the store as a means to survive after the fever took him, but now even that security was gone. "Mrs. Patterson at the boarding house might let you stay a night or two," the sheriff suggested. "Thank you," Naomi replied, her voice barely audible. Charity, it had come to that. As the sheriff walked away, she glanced at the store's broken window, the splintered door, and shelves emptied of their most valuable goods. Even if she had a place to sleep, how would she restart? The bank wouldn't give a loan to a widow with nothing to her name. "Come, Samuel," she said, forcing strength into her voice. "Let's see if Mrs. Patterson has room for us tonight." They walked down the street, heads bowed, past the saloon where raucous laughter spilled into the evening air. Naomi didn't notice the tall figure watching from the shadows, a cigarette glowing briefly as he took a thoughtful drag. 2 days later, Naomi sat on the edge of her narrow bed at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house, counting the coins she'd earned helping with laundry. Barely enough for another night's lodging, let alone food for tomorrow. Samuel played quietly on the floor with a carved wooden horse, the only toy that hadn't been in the store during the robbery. "Mama, when can we go home?" The question nearly broke her. "I don't know, darling." The bank had already sent word without the deed. They couldn't verify her ownership of the property. They'd given her a week to vacate what little remained inside. A knock at the door startled them both. "Mrs. Bennett," Mrs. Patterson's voice called, "there's a gentleman here to see you." "A Mr. Tucker Kane." Naomi frowned. The name meant nothing to her. "Please ask him to wait in the parlor. I'll be down shortly." She straightened her simple dress, one of only 2 she now possessed, and pinched her cheeks for color. If this was about the store, she needed to appear composed, not desperate. In the parlor stood a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. His clothes were trail-worn but clean denim pants, a faded blue shirt, and boots that had seen many miles. A cowboy by the look of him, though he'd removed his hat and held it respectfully in his hands. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. "I'm Tucker Kane. I've come about your situation." Naomi's spine stiffened. "My situation, Mr. Kane, the robbery," he clarified. "I was in the saloon when it happened, heard the commotion but was too late to help. Sheriff told me what was taken." "And what business is it of yours?" she asked, then immediately regretted her tone. This man owed her nothing, and she couldn't afford to offend anyone who might offer assistance. Tucker Kane didn't seem bothered. "I've spent the last few days tracking those men, the Harding brothers." Hope flared in Naomi's chest. "You found them, confronted them, and retrieved what's rightfully yours." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Naomi's hands trembled as she unwrapped it. There, nestled in the fabric, was William's gold pocket watch, her locket, and most miraculous of all, the deed to the store. "How did you?" she began, unable to finish the question as tears welled in her eyes. "Those men have a reputation for getting drunk and loose-lipped after a successful robbery. Wasn't hard to find them celebrating in a cantina near the border." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "They weren't expecting anyone to come after them." "You could have been killed," Naomi whispered. Tucker shrugged. "Not my first encounter with men like them, won't be my last." "The money," she started. "Gone, I'm afraid, already spent or gambled away." He hesitated. "But I've brought something else." Tucker led her outside where a wagon waited, loaded with goods: flour, sugar, coffee, preserved meats, fabrics, tools, even toys. Everything needed to restock a small general store. "Mr. Kane, I can't accept this," Naomi said, staggered by the generosity. "It must have cost a fortune." "It's not charity, Mrs. Bennett," he replied firmly. "It's an investment in San Diego. Towns need good stores run by good people." "I have no way to repay you," she said, wasn't asking for repayment. His eyes met hers, and something passed between them, an understanding perhaps, or something more. Just doing what needed doing. "Mama, look." Samuel had followed them outside and was staring wide-eyed at the wagon. "Are those for our store?" Tucker knelt to the boy's level. "They sure are, young man, and I could use a strong helper to unload it all." "What do you say?" Samuel's face lit up, and for the first time since William's death, Naomi saw pure joy in her son's eyes. Over the next 3 days, Tucker helped Naomi repair the broken window and door, restore the shelves, and organize the new inventory. He worked from sunrise to sunset. Stopping only for the meals Naomi insisted on preparing for him at the small stove in the back of the store. On the third evening, as they sat sharing a simple stew, Naomi finally asked the question that had been on her mind. "Why are you doing this, Mr. Kane?" Tucker considered her question, his spoon pausing halfway to his mouth. 6 years ago, I lost everything in a fire. My ranch, livestock, even family heirlooms. A stranger helped me rebuild, never asked for anything in return." He set down his spoon. "I'm just passing along the kindness." "And once the store is restored," Naomi asked, heart beating faster than she cared to admit, "will you move on then?" "That depends," he said, holding her gaze. "I've been drifting a long time. Might be nice to stay put for a while, if there's reason enough." A week after the robbery, Naomi officially reopened Bennett's general store. The townspeople came in a steady stream, partly from curiosity about the handsome cowboy who'd appointed himself her protector, but mostly from genuine need for her goods and services. Tucker remained, taking a room at the boarding house and helping with the heavier work around the store. He had a way with customers, honest, straightforward, never overselling but ensuring they left with what they truly needed. Sales were better than they'd been even before the robbery. As summer progressed, Naomi found herself watching for Tucker each morning, her heart lifting at the sight of his tall figure walking toward the store. Samuel adored him, following him around and absorbing his stories of cattle drives and frontier towns. One evening in early August, Naomi was closing up when Tucker appeared in the doorway. "Got something to show you and the boy," he said, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "If you're willing to take a short ride." Curiosity piqued, Naomi and Samuel climbed into Tucker's wagon. He drove them to the outskirts of town where the buildings gave way to rolling hills. As they crested one particularly beautiful slope overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Tucker stopped the wagon. "What do you think of this spot?" he asked. Naomi gazed at the view, sea meeting sky in an endless blue horizon. "It's breathtaking." "It's for sale," Tucker said. 20 acres, good water source, room for a house, some livestock, maybe even horses for a certain young man. Samuel's eyes widened. Really, Mr. Tucker, horses? Tucker smiled. Really, Sam, if your mother approves. Naomi turned to him, confusion evident. I don't understand. The store's doing well, but that room behind it is no place for a family to live, Tucker explained. I thought maybe we could build something here. He cleared his throat. Together, she repeated, the word heavy with implication. I know it's sudden, Tucker continued, words tumbling out now. And I know you're still grieving William. I'd never presume to replace him, but these past weeks, watching you rebuild your life with such courage. He met her eyes. I've grown to care for you, Naomi, and for Samuel. Tears pricked at her eyes. Tucker, you don't need to answer now, he said quickly. Just think about it. I've put a holding payment on the land. It'll wait until you're ready, if you're ever ready. That night, Naomi lay awake long after Samuel had fallen asleep. She thought of William, his gentle smile, his unwavering support, the life they'd built together. The pain of losing him had dulled from sharp agony to a tender ache. Would he want her to remain alone? Or would he want her to find happiness again? And Tucker so different from William, yet equally kind in his own way. Not with words or gestures, but with actions. He had restored not just her livelihood, but her faith that good people still existed in this often harsh world. The next morning, Naomi rose early and walked to the small cemetery on the hill. At William's grave, she placed wildflowers and spoke softly, telling him about Tucker, about the land, about the possibility of a new beginning. The breeze that rustled the grass felt like an answer, a permission, a blessing. When she returned to the store, Tucker was already there, organizing a new shipment. His face brightened when he saw her, then turned serious at her expression. Naomi, everything all right? I'd like to see the land again, she said, and talk about those building plans. The slow smile that spread across his face was all the confirmation she needed that she'd made the right decision. As summer faded into autumn, construction began on a modest but sturdy home on the hillside property. Tucker proved himself as skilled with carpentry as he was with handling difficult customers or calming spooked horses. The townspeople, seeing Naomi's happiness growing alongside the house's frame, rallied to help. On Thanksgiving Day, 1873, they moved into the completed home, a 6-room structure with large windows facing the ocean and a deep porch for watching sunsets. Samuel had his own bedroom for the first time in his life, and Naomi had a modern kitchen with a pump that brought water right inside. But Tucker did not move in. Instead, he took a small room above the stable he'd built, maintaining a respectful distance despite the deepening feelings between them. People talk, he explained when Naomi questioned his decision. I won't have your reputation tarnished, especially with Samuel to consider. His old-fashioned propriety both frustrated and endeared him to her. They continued their partnership at the store, which now employed 2 local girls to help with the increased business, allowing Naomi more time at home. Winter brought storms that lashed the coast, but the new house stood firm against the elements. On particularly wild nights, Samuel would crawl into his mother's bed, and they would listen to the rain together, safe and warm in the home Tucker had helped build for them. It was on such a night, with Samuel finally asleep in his own room after the storm had passed, that Naomi sat on the porch watching the clouds clear to reveal a star-filled sky. The sound of boots on the steps alerted her to Tucker's presence. Checking the roof for leaks, he explained, settling beside her on the bench. All tight and dry. Like everything you build, she said softly. They sat in comfortable silence, shoulders almost touching. Finally, Tucker spoke. I've had a letter from my brother in Montana. His wife's expecting their 3rd child, invited me to visit in the spring. Naomi's heart sank. Will you go? Thought I might. Been years since I've seen him. He paused. Thought maybe you and Samuel might want to come along, see a bit more of the country. As what, Tucker? Naomi asked, turning to face him fully. As your business partner, your friend, what are we to each other? The question hung between them, loaded with months of unspoken feelings and cautious restraint. You know how I feel about you, Tucker said, his voice low. Have since that first week. But you deserve time and space to be sure of your own mind. And if I am sure, she challenged, Tucker reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. Then I'd ask you properly to be my wife, to raise Samuel as my son. To build a life with me, whether here or wherever the road takes us. And if I said yes, her heart was racing now. Then I'd be the happiest man in California, he said simply. Naomi leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Yes, she whispered, just before their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home and setting out on an adventure all at once. They were married on New Year's Day, 1874, in the small church in San Diego. Samuel stood proudly as his mother's escort, solemnly giving her away as Tucker had suggested. The townspeople filled the pews, witnessing the union of the widow who had rebuilt her life and the cowboy who had helped her do it. Spring brought changes to their lives. The store continued to thrive under the management of their most trusted employee, allowing Naomi, Tucker, and Samuel to make the journey to Montana. They traveled by train across landscapes more vast and varied than Naomi had ever imagined, deserts giving way to mountains, forests to rolling plains. Tucker's brother Nathan and his wife Elizabeth welcomed them with open arms. Their ranch, sprawling and successful, became a second home for the 3 weeks of their visit. Samuel, enchanted by his new cousins and the herd of horses, declared he wanted to be a rancher when he grew up. Maybe we could raise a few horses back home, Tucker suggested one evening as they watched the sunset from the ranch's wide porch. Not as many as Nathan, but enough to start a small breeding program, good money in quality horses. Is that what you want? Naomi asked, studying his face. To be a rancher again, Tucker considered the question. I want what makes you and Samuel happy, the store, the house, they're yours, I wouldn't change that. They're ours, Naomi corrected gently. And yes, I think horses would make a fine addition, Samuel would love it. Upon their return to San Diego, they put the plan into action. Tucker purchased 5 quality mares and a stallion with the money he'd saved, and construction began on an expanded stable and paddock. By summer's end, Tucker Kane's horses were becoming known throughout Southern California for their strength and even temperament. Their first anniversary brought another blessing. Naomi discovered she was expecting a child. Samuel, now 7, was ecstatic at the prospect of becoming a big brother. Will it be a boy or a girl? He asked repeatedly, to which Tucker always answered, healthy is all that matters. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall and winter. As spring approached, Naomi found herself increasingly reflective, often sitting at her dressing table and gazing at the 2 most precious objects she owned, William's pocket watch and the simple gold band Tucker had placed on her finger. Does it trouble you? Tucker asked one evening, finding her lost in thought. Thinking of him while carrying our child, Naomi reached for his hand. No, William gave me Samuel and taught me to love. You restored what was taken and taught me to love again. Both are parts of who I am. Tucker knelt beside her chair. I've never been jealous of your past, Naomi. It made you the woman I fell in love with. Their daughter, Emma Grace Kane, arrived on a warm April morning in 1875. She had Tucker's blue eyes and a tuft of dark hair like her mother's. Samuel appointed himself her protector from the moment he first held her, promising solemnly to teach her to ride horses and swim in the ocean when she was old enough. Life settled into a rhythm of sweet domesticity, punctuated by the everyday adventures of raising children and building a business. The store continued to prosper under their joint management, and Tucker's horse breeding operation grew steadily, gaining a reputation that brought buyers from as far away as San Francisco. In the summer of 1877, as they celebrated Emma's 2nd birthday, an unexpected visitor arrived at their door. Sheriff Dawson, now retired but still commanding respect. Tucker Kane, he said without preamble. I've come about the Harding brothers." Naomi froze, the name sending a chill through her despite the warm day. Tucker stepped slightly in front of her, protective even after all this time. "What about them?" he asked calmly. "They've been caught. Federal marshals got them robbing a bank in Arizona." The former sheriff adjusted his hat. "They're being brought to San Diego to stand trial for their crimes here first, including what they did to Mrs. Bennett, Mrs. Kane, that is." "When?" Tucker asked. "2 weeks. They'll need you both to testify." After the sheriff left, Naomi sank into a chair, memories of that terrible day flooding back. "I never thought I'd have to face them again." Tucker knelt beside her. "You don't have to if you don't want to. I can testify alone." Naomi shook her head. "No, I need to look them in the eye." For closure. The trial was brief but tense. The evidence was overwhelming, including Tucker's testimony about tracking the brothers and confronting them. When asked why he hadn't brought them to justice then, Tucker simply stated, "My priority was recovering Mrs. Kane's property. I left punishment to the law." The brothers were sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison. As they were led away, the youngest Harding brother locked eyes with Naomi, his gaze venomous. "This ain't over," he spat. 15 years ain't forever." Tucker's hand tightened on hers, but he said nothing until they were outside in the California sunshine. "He's wrong," he said quietly. "It is over. And even if it wasn't, I'd never let anyone harm you or our family again." The threat, empty as it might have been, prompted changes. Tucker hired 2 ranch hands to help with the horses and provide additional security. He installed better locks on the doors and taught Samuel, now 9, basic self-defense. But he also refused to let fear dictate their lives. "We've built something beautiful here," he told Naomi one night as they stood on their porch watching the moonlight on the ocean. "No one can take that away unless we let them." Life continued its forward march. In 1878, Naomi gave birth to twin boys, Thomas and James, completing their family. The store expanded to a second location in the growing town, managed primarily by their original employees who had become like family themselves. Samuel, at 12, was showing a real talent for working with horses, spending every spare moment helping Tucker with the breeding program. Emma, precocious and determined, insisted on attending the town school a year early, already reading at an advanced level thanks to Naomi's patient teaching. One evening in the summer of 1880, as they prepared for bed, Tucker seemed unusually pensive. Naomi, knowing her husband's moods, waited until the children were asleep before asking what troubled him. "It's been 7 years today," he said, standing at the window. "7 years since what?" she asked, though something in her already knew, "Since I walked into your store after the robbery." He turned to her, his face softened by the lamplight. 7 years since I found my reason to stop drifting." Naomi crossed the room to him, sliding her arms around his waist. "Do you ever regret it, settling down?" Tucker shook his head, drawing her closer. "Not for a single moment. But I've been thinking about that day, how close we came to never meeting. If I hadn't been in that saloon, if I hadn't overheard the sheriff." "But you were, and you did," Naomi said firmly. "And look at everything that came of it." She gestured to the room around them, to the photographs of their children on the dresser, to the life they'd built together. Tucker kissed her then, with the same tenderness as their first kiss, but deepened by years of shared joy and hardship. "I didn't just replace what was taken, Naomi. You gave me so much more in return." "What did I give you?" she asked, curious about his reflective mood. "A home," he said simply. "Not just this house, but a place to belong, a family, purpose." The following morning, Tucker surprised her with a gift, a small wooden box he'd crafted himself. Inside lay a delicate silver bracelet with 7 charms, a store, a house, a horse, and 4 smaller figures representing their children. "One for each year," he explained, "and room for more." As Naomi fastened it around her wrist, she thought about the journey that had brought them here, from devastating loss to unexpected love, from emptied shelves to a life overflowing with blessings. The robbery that had seemed like the end of everything had, in fact, been just the beginning. By 1885, their enterprises had grown beyond what either could have imagined. The store had expanded to 3 locations, and Tucker's horses were sought after throughout the West. Samuel, now 18, had recently taken over much of the day-to-day operations of the breeding program, showing a head for business that matched his affinity for horses. Emma, at 10, was top of her class and already talking about becoming a teacher. The twins, 7 and inseparable, were happiest when helping around the ranch or accompanying Tucker on his shorter business trips. On a crisp October evening, as they celebrated their 11th wedding anniversary with a quiet dinner after the children were in bed, Tucker presented Naomi with another surprise: the deed to a plot of land adjacent to theirs. "What's this for?" she asked, studying the document. "Samuel's wedding gift," Tucker explained. "He'll be proposing to Rebecca Martin at Christmas if her father approves. Thought they might want to build near family." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "He told you before he told me," Tucker chuckled. "Only because he wanted advice on how to ask for her hand properly. He's been saving every penny from his work with the horses." "My baby," Naomi whispered, "about to start his own family." "He's a fine young man," Tucker said proudly. "You raised him well even before I came along." "We raised him well," Naomi corrected. "He's as much your son as the twins are." Later that night, as they lay in each other's arms, Naomi thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. "Do you ever wonder about those men?" she asked softly. "The Harding brothers." Tucker was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes they should be out of prison now." "Does that worry you?" He pulled her closer. "No, they've likely moved on to other territories, and even if they haven't, we're not the same people they wronged years ago. We're stronger now, together." In the spring of 1886, Samuel married Rebecca in a ceremony on their hillside property, with the Pacific Ocean as a backdrop. As Naomi watched her firstborn commit his life to the woman he loved, she couldn't help but marvel at how fully life had restored what was once taken and given so much more besides. Tucker, as if reading her thoughts, squeezed her hand. "From empty shelves to overflowing hearts," he murmured. "Not a bad trade, Mrs. Kane." "The best trade," she agreed, leaning against the steady strength of the man who had asked for nothing but given everything. "The very best."